All right, let's look at this quadratic. We have 3x squared plus 2x minus 7 is equal to 0. I see that I have that middle term here, that x term, so I know that I can factor. I'm going to try and factor. When I do my t-chart, it doesn't work, so that tells me I have to use the quadratic formula. So let's use the quadratic formula on this. Step number 1, make sure our equation's set equal to 0, which we would have already checked if I was factoring. Step number 2 is to label a, b, and c. If you have it in standard form, the x squared, the x, and the number, you're just going to go down the line. So a is equal to 3, the value in front of x squared. B is equal to 2, the value in front of the x. And then c is just a number that's by itself, which is a negative 7. Make sure that before you label a, b, and c, it is already set equal to 0. Otherwise, the numbers are going to change. Okay, so we labeled a, b, and c, and now I'm going to plug it into the quadratic formula. So here's our quadratic formula. I'm going to rewrite x is equal to negative b, so negative 2, plus or minus the square root. B squared, I always put b in parentheses to make sure that it is all being squared, minus 4 times my a value, which is 3, times my c value, which is negative 7. Again, when I have negatives, I like to put them in parentheses, and then all divided by 2 times my a value of 3. So I used this formula here, and I just plugged in those values. Okay, plugged it into the formula, check. Next, I'm going to simplify just what's under this square root. So I'm just going to look at this guy here. So we have to remember PEMDAS, remember parentheses, then we're going to do exponents. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to do 2 squared, which is 2 times 2, which gives me 4, and then copy down the rest. Done exponents, now I'm going to go multiplying and dividing. So this guy right here is all being multiplied, so I'm going to just do it in one kind of big step. So let's carry down this 4. I like to look at how many negatives I have. So I have a negative times a negative, which means 2 negatives when I multiply make a positive. So I'm going to put a plus there before I forget. Now I'm going to do 4 times 3, which is 12, and then 12 times 7 gives me 84. So I'm going to put an 84 here. I've already taken care of my, my negatives, so now I'm just going to add these. 84 plus another 4 gives me 88. So I'm going to rewrite this next step, and I'm just going to plug in the 88, which is going to go under the square root. And then at this step, I also like to clean up the bottom. I can do 2 times 3, which will give me 6. Okay, so I've simplified what's under the square root, and now I'm just going to continue to simplify if possible. So I'm looking at the square root of 88, and I'm like, kind of a big number. I wonder if we can do our factor tree and see if we can simplify that square root. So 88, I know I can break up into 2 times 44, 2 times 22, and 2 times 11, and I can't break down 11 anymore. So I'm going to cross off the numbers that I've already broken up, and now I'm looking for 2 of the same number that I could take out. Well, I see a group of 2s here, so I'm going to take those out, and then this 2 and this 11, they're lonely, they don't have any friends, so they have to stay underneath the radical. So I'm going to rewrite this. X is equal to negative 2. Again, I'm taking out a pair of 2s and writing it once. And then under the square root, I have a 2 and an 11. I need to multiply them together. So 2 times 11 gives me 22, and that is still all over 6. Okay, we are almost there. Remember, this plus or minus really means I have 2 options. I have negative 2 plus 2 square root 22 over 6, or I have negative 2 minus 2 square root 22, all divided by 6. So I'm going to look at just the top one. I'm going to get rid of my work over here. So when we have a big fraction, and I have a number plus or minus a number with a radical all divided by a number, I'm only going to look at the values that are not underneath the radical. So that 22, he's going to stay 22 forever. Now, we cannot touch him because he's protected by that square root. If I can take out a greatest common factor between all 3 of these, I can essentially divide it out. So I know 2, 2, and 6, I can divide out of 2. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to divide this and say negative 1 plus 1 square root 22, all divided by 3. If you want to think about it like this, the top could be negative 2 parenthesis 1. Oh, I'll take out just a 2. I could say 2 parentheses negative 1 plus 1 square root 22 all divided by 2 times 3. This is really what we did. We canceled out this 2 with this 2, and that's how I got the negative 1 plus 1 square root 22 over 3. Okay, on the bottom, I can do the same. They are both all divisible by 2. I don't touch the square root of 22 because it's protected. So now I have negative 1 minus 1 square root 22 all divided by 3. So those cannot be simplified anymore. So those are my 2 answers there. Sometimes some people will leave it as negative 1 plus or minus 1 square root 22 all over 3. Either way is totally fine with me. If you want it as 2 separate answers, you can write it. If you want it as one answer there, you can. The biggest part of this is when you get into simplifying, make sure that you are not touching that 22 underneath the radical. He is done. We don't want to divide out a 2 from him as well. Okay, if you guys have questions, go back through this video, go step by step. It's not super hard, it just has a lot of steps. So make sure that when you are practicing on your own, reference your notes, maybe have this pulled up in your notes and see if you can match the steps on another one that's similar. If y'all have questions, come find me. If not, I will see y'all in the next one.